So today we will learn something very Guys, come on, yeah. I'm in the middle of a recording. So students, did you just see what happened? I didn't tell my body to move. I didn't even tell my hands to do the catch. Yet, all of these things happened instantly. As soon as I saw the signal, my eyes went towards it, my brain processed it, and then it was sent to my muscles to receive the catch. All of this is done because of control and coordination in our body. Exactly what we will be studying in today's session. So hi everyone, I am Kirti Ma'am, your biology educator, and I welcome you to today's session on control and coordination. Very important from both point of view because every year questions like short answers, long answers, and especially diagram based questions are asked from this particular session. To make this easier for you, we will be providing you with the class notes as well as DPPs absolutely free of cost. And to get them, you simply have to click on the link given in the description box below, which will redirect you to Physics Wala's app, and there you can get all the study materials absolutely free. Now to just let you know what Physics Wala is, it is India's most trusted learning platform which converts students' dreams into reality. So if you also want to boost your preparation, do not forget to enroll in the free crash course now. So over here is a guy who got late for his exams, and as soon as he heard the exam bell ringing, he got panicked and started running. Now I want you all to pause for 5 seconds and think what is happening over here. Since he got panicked and he was running, obviously his heartbeat would have increased, his breathing rate would have increased, his body must be sweating, and his pupils must have dilated. All of these different activities are taking place at a time. That is called as coordination. But if somebody tries to cross his path now, he will be easily able to mold and reach his classroom, which also means that he is conscious about his environment. So consciousness, along with all these different activities that are happening at a time in a beautiful sync, are very well controlled or regulated. And hence the name of the chapter, Control and Coordination. So now let us look at the different topics that we will be covering today. Firstly, we will having an introduction to the chapter, followed by what are the different types of nervous system. Then we will cover reflex actions, very important and board's most favorite topic I can say. Endocrine system, and followed by coordination in plants. Now, talking about coordination in animals. Students, it takes place actually via two systems, that is nervous system and endocrine system. Obviously, since these terms have system in their name, they are actually organ system that you studied in class 9. But I know you can get overwhelmed with these terms, so let me help you with some examples. Let us rewind to the guy who got late for his exams. As soon as he heard the exam bell, what happened? He got panicked. He started a response. And when the response started, it was very quick. And that response, as soon as he reached the classroom, it stopped because he started writing his paper and the panic got over. So whenever the body has to generate the responses which are very quick and short-lived, it are actually taken care by your nervous system. So it takes care of the responses which are very quick as well as short-lived. For example, if you touch a hot pan, the response would be automatically to remove the hand away from the object. So that means the response is quick and it is very short-lived because you do not touch the pan for so long, you just remove it quickly. Correct? Now, answer this question. Did you grow your height in one day? Or did you grow it in an year? Or did your muscles develop in an year? I think everybody will say no because it took long time. So whenever the body has to give responses which are actually very slow but they take place for a long time, it is actually done by your endocrine system. So the responses are very slow, such as your growth, but it is very long lived. It is going to be there lifelong for all of you, right? That is done actually by your endocrine system. But now the question comes, ma'am, does coordination also take place in plants? Because obviously they are also living organisms. So the answer is yes, students. Coordination also takes place in plants. Since plants do not have a nervous system, the coordination in them takes place via plant movements as well as plant hormones. Now you not to worry about this because we will cover each one of these topics slowly. But for the time being, we are first going to start with coordination in animals, and that too nervous systems. And then we will move to endocrine system and coordination in plants one by one. But the question comes now, why do we actually need a nervous system? Why only digestive system, respiratory system, excretory system were not enough? What is the need that we need to have a nervous system? Because firstly, it helps you in sensing the environment. For example, if your mother just now cooks Maggie, you will be automatically able to sense the smell. So it is making you aware of your surroundings. Then it also controls certain voluntary actions. For example, if I'm talking, if I'm writing, if I'm walking, all of these actions are actually under my control. So these actions are actually called as voluntary actions done by our own will. These are voluntary actions, or I can say basically the actions which are very controlled by us. This is a short trick to remember. V for voluntary and V for very controlled. So this is just a synonymous kind of trick that I have made, okay? Now, there are certain involuntary actions that are also taking place in our body, actions that are not under our control. For example, if you are studying right now, even if you are not doing anything, let's say, your body will still be breathing, your heart will still be pumping, your blood will still be transporting, and your body must be filtering some kind of waste. So all these actions are not under our control and they are called as involuntary actions. Then it also helps you in remembering the information, something as basic as your name, your address, your roll number, or remembering what you studied. Like, I know most of you don't remember what you study, but obviously nervous system helps you in remembering the information. Now, nervous system basically has two types, but to make it easier for you, let us understand this with the help of an example. Think of it this to be a central post office in your city. Now, this central post office students receive lots of messages, okay? It is receiving lots of messages, lots of letters. So basically, I can say this post office is actually a storehouse of information. It has all the information, and once this has been received, it will be sorted, and as per the dates, they will be sent to different homes, different localities and different parts of the city. But who is going to transport this information to different localities? Will the post office itself move to each and every home to give them the message? No, right? For that, we have some transporters of this message. We have some transporters who will take this message and deliver it to different homes, different cities, and they are basically your postmen. So postmen actually carry the information and transport it to different localities. So that means the information actually is stored in the center. Center makes the decision, and then with the help of some carriers, they are given to different parts of the city. Exactly in the same way, students, in humans also there is a central storehouse of information. If this is my body, there must be a central storehouse of information that is actually called as your central nervous system. Central nervous system itself means that something is present in the center. If this is the entire body, can you see this particular region which is present in the center of the body? This will constitute your central nervous system, which will be the storehouse of information. It receives all the information, it sends back the information and makes the decision as what has to be done. Now this central nervous system, as you can see, it is written over here also, it is actually made up of two different organs. The two different organs are brain and spinal cord respectively. This is the brain, and right from the end of the brain there emerges a tail. This is called as spinal cord, and both of them are the components of the central nervous system, or you can also abbreviate it as CNS. Now, this has all the information, it will make all the decisions. From here, the information has to pass to different parts of the body. It has to go to my limbs also, right? For that, we have another kind of system that is called as peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, which can be also abbreviated as PNS. PNS. But a PNS is actually made up of nerves. Now, don't get confused as to what nerves are. Simply imagine them to be some kind of cables who will take information from one place to the other. Right? So what are these nerves actually going to do? They will simply carry information from the brain to different parts of the face and from the face to the brain. Also, they will carry information from spinal cord to different parts of the body and from different parts of the body back to the spinal cord. So these are what nerves are actually supposed to do. So peripheral nervous system, the term periphery, students, itself means boundary, which means a system that is going to connect the brain with the boundary of the body, right? These are actually made up of only nerves, and there are two types of nerves. Firstly, that is cranial nerves, and the second one are spinal nerves. So actually cranial nerves are the nerves that emerge from the brain itself. They are called cranial nerves, and they are actually 12 in pairs. They are actually in 12 pairs to be precise. Now, talking about spinal nerve, other kind of nerves are actually your spinal nerves. Spinal nerves, from the name itself, is clear that they will arise from the spinal cord and they will deliver the information to different parts of the body like your limbs, right? So spinal nerves are actually in 31 pairs. They are in actually 31 pairs that you need to remember. I will just show you a better image so that things can be even clearer for you. See, this is your central nervous system. Over here is your brain and your spinal cord. So this is actually your central nervous system, right? And alongside that, all the yellowish region that you can see are your nerves, or we can also say they constitute your peripheral nervous system. So there are certain nerves that are emerging from the brain. These are actually your cranial nerves, and the spinal nerves are the ones that are emerging from your spinal cord, right? This is how the entire network of nerves are being present in your body. So now let us say what will happen over here. Let us assume that you just touched a hot object over here. As soon as you touched a hot object, what will the peripheral nervous system do? They will carry this information, and then they will carry this information and transport it to your spinal cord. Once the information is at the spinal cord, it will reach your brain. So this is how the transport of messages takes place through the nerves. Now talking about spinal nerves and cranial nerves, I have some better images for you. Cranial nerves, as you can see, arise from the brain. So there is a better image that can display the same thing. Over here you see, these are all the networks of the cranial nerves that are coming out from the brain. And over here you see, these are the network of your spinal nerves that are present in your body. So this is just to simplify it for all of you guys. Now talking about nervous system, same thing is mentioned over here. Central nervous system has brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system has cranial nerves as well as spinal nerves. Now moving forward, we have the conclusion that you need to simply remember of all of the things. The communication between the CNS and the body parts is facilitated by the PNS or the peripheral system, which consists of cranial nerves, and cranial nerves arise from the brain, and the spinal nerves which arise from the spinal cord. So simply to make it easier for you, I can write that CNS transports the information to the body parts. CNS transports the information to the body parts, and body parts transport the information back to the CNS with the help of PNS, that is your peripheral nervous system. So what will happen? Simply the transfer of information. Over here is PNS, and it will take your information from the CNS fast to the body, from the body to the CNS. That is how your entire coordination between the two systems is maintained. Now talking about different levels of organization, I think we have studied this in our lower grades, that similar types of cell forms tissues, different types of tissues form organ, different types of organ form organ system, and organ system forms an organism. Now talking about the same thing, nervous system, students, is also an organ system, right? Nervous system, from the name itself, it is clear that it is a kind of organ system. Since it is an organ system, it must be made up of some organs, right? So the organs are your brain and the spinal cord, which are a part of your central nervous system. Then they are actually made up of some kind of tissue which is called as the nervous tissue, and nervous tissue must be made up of some kind of cell that is called as neuron or nerve cell. Neuron or nerve cell. This is the entire level of organization, that nerve cell will actually form your nervous tissue will form your brain and spinal cord, will form a nervous system. Just to have you with easier understanding, over here you can think that this is your brain full of nervous tissue, and your spinal cord is also full of the same nervous tissue, and they are actually made up of simplest cells. They are called as neurons and nerve cells. Now to understand what does a neuron look like, let us draw a diagram. So since neuron or nerve cell is actually a cell, which means that it will have a nucleus, so let us draw a nucleus over here. This nucleus will be surrounded by cytoplasm, so we need to draw the cytoplasm alongside. Okay. Now, What happens over here is your cytoplasm. In this particular region, the cytoplasm will be present. And its cytoplasm is not present in a very circular fashion. It is present in some elongated fashion. Now, these elongated fashions actually looks like, you can say, the roots of, it actually looks like the roots of a tree or a plant. Okay, somewhat like this. This is how it looks like. And then the last cytoplasmic extension takes place and it eventually forms a long tube-like structure which ends in something like this. Not to worry, we are going to label it all together, right? So firstly, let us mention that this is actually the nucleus. This is actually the nucleus over here. Around the nucleus, obviously, there will be the presence of cytoplasm. Now, this particular hair-like or root-like structure that you can see over here, students, these are actually your dendrites. These hair-like structures that you see, this is actually your dendrites and they are present towards the starting of the neuron. Towards this particular portion, we will be labeling this as portion as your cell body. We will be labeling this portion as your cell body, or you can also say cyton, which is present in this particular region only. Only this particular portion is actually called as your cell body. Now this extends into a long tube. This long tube is actually called as axon. This long tube is termed as axon, and when the axon ends, it actually forms some branches. These are actually called as axon terminals, you can say, or you can also call them as nerve endings because this is a nerve cell. So we can write nerve cells or nerve cells endings. These are what the major structure looks like in your neuron. So some neurons are actually present like this only. Okay, so this neuron beta is actually called as your non-myelinated neuron. This neuron is actually called as your non-myelinated neuron. Why is it called non-myelinated? I will just let you know in a minute. Okay, this is a non-myelinated neuron. Simply, that is the name of the neuron. If these are the only structures that are present in the neuron. But certain other times on this axon, there can be a particular sheath that is present on them, which covers the axon. This is called as myelin sheath. This is called as myelin sheath. So the neurons which have the presence of a myelin sheath, they are actually called as myelinated neurons. They are called as myelinated neurons because of the presence of myelinated sheath. But since it was absent in this particular neuron, it is called as non-myelinated neuron. Now, moving to the next topic, but before that, let me also share something that neurons or nerve cells are the major cells which are able to sense every single thing in the environment. That means if you are able to see something, hear something, sense something, taste something, everything that is being done is done with the help of your particular nerve cell. Now, nerve cell, what is so special about it that it is able to sense the environment? And once it is able to sense the environment, how is it able to transfer all that information such that a human being can respond? Right? If I am right now just touching a hot object, I will be able to respond by removing my hand. So how did the neuron sense it and how did I respond towards it? Let us try to understand this with the help of an example. So if you place a parcel from Amazon, the delivery guy comes and then he calls you, sir or ma'am, please come outside to receive your parcel. You receive the parcel, that means you are now the receptor, correct? Because you are receiving something. Likewise, neurons also receive the information because they have receptors present on them. They have receptors present on them. Now, where are the receptors actually present? See, over here, receptors are present on the dendrites. So, these are the dendrites. Receptors will be present on the dendrites. On all the dendrites, it will be present. But to be precise, only on the dendrites and nowhere else. This is how receptors are present and they are capable of receiving some information. From the name itself, it is clear that it will receive some kind of information. Once the information has been received, it will enter inside the neuron and then it will be transferred. Let us see how the mechanism of transfer also takes place. For that, firstly, let us understand over here is a hand and it has touched a hot object. So as soon as the hand touches the hot object, our first reaction is to remove the hand away from the object. That is what happens, right? So what exactly was there? Since a neuron is actually present in the hand, I hope you guys can see it. I'll just zoom it out for you. This is a neuron that is present in the hand that has sensed all the information. Now what happens is that once the neuron senses the information, over here firstly students, the information was of heat, right? The information was, beta, it is of heat, or I can say pain, correct? But in scientific terms, we will not call information from now on. Instead of this term, we will use something more biological, something more technical, that is called as stimulus. Stimulus is, beta, obviously information only, but just a fancy name for it. Okay, so anything that we are able to sense is called as stimulus. Correct. So over here we were able to sense the temperature or the heat of the pan. So the stimulus was heat or pain. Let me show you with some better examples over here. Okay, you can understand. See, this is a particular eye. Now over here light was being sensed by the eye. That means light was the stimulus. Correct. Over here if you see, sound is being sensed. That means sound is a signal or a stimulus. Likewise over here this particular guy is able to smell the food. That means over here smell is a stimulus. Correct. So stimulus is basically any information that we can sense from the environment and then respond towards it. So this neuron will sense the information. How will it sense the stimulus? It will sense it because there are some receptors that are being present. So for your better understanding, I will just take this neuron out, and now let us think that over here are the receptors. Over here are the receptors. The receptor, beta, has now received the information. The receptor has received the information. Let us draw the information in red color now. This red color is basically the stimulus. Okay, this stimulus has been now received by the receptor. Now it will enter. Now this stimulus, beta, it will enter inside your cyton. But as soon as the stimulus enter inside the neuron or the cyton, it says that I want to be converted into an electrical impulse or an electrical message. So it gets converted into an electrical signal, electrical message. Electrical message is nothing else but an impulse. That means the message has been simply transported. So that is called as electrical impulse. The better term to use is electrical impulse. Now this impulse, students, travels from the cyton to the axon and reaches towards the axon terminals. Okay. Now again, since it is an electrical impulse, assume this to be like electricity. So it cannot travel in an open space. Definitely it has to transport in a closed system. So neuron is closed, that is why your impulse was able to transport inside the neuron. So all this information was from cyton, axon terminals, and now it has come to the axon terminals. But the question actually comes that how will this then be transported? How will this be sent outside then? How will this be sent outside, because it is electrical impulse? So it is first converted in the form of some chemicals. It is converted in the form of certain chemicals. So this will first convert into chemicals, and these chemicals will come out in this particular space outside. And after multiple steps have taken place, I'm just going to write multiple steps so that you don't get confused. We are going to cover these multiple steps in the next slide. So this multiple steps will actually cause your hand muscle to move it away. It will cause your hand muscle to move it away. So what I'm going to call this particular muscle over here, this particular muscle will be your effector muscle. Effector muscle, why? Because this is able to, actually generate a response. This is your effector muscle. Now, effector muscle is the muscle that generates a response, that decides to put its hand back. And what happened has eventually, it has generated a response. The response was to move your hand away from the hot object. These are the actual sequence of events that take place when the nerve impulse has to be conducted. Now you understood that nerve impulse actually is a message only. So how is the message conducted? All of these things are now, I think, clear to you guys. If you still have any doubts, you can always let me know in the comment section. Now let us understand two very important terms before we move further. They are called as synapse and neuromuscular junction, or NMJ. They are called as synapse as well as neuromuscular junction, simply NMJ. Let us understand these terms one by one. Okay, now to understand these terms, let us first understand some basic diagrams. Okay, so over here, let us say this is your stimulus and this stimulus is present on the receptor. Okay, so what is the logical step for it? It will first enter the cyton. From there, it will move to the axon, then to the axon terminals. So all the stimulus is actually supposed to reach the axon terminals. But since this actually travels in the form of electrical impulses inside the neuron, it cannot pass in an empty space. So then this is particularly converted in certain chemicals. So there will be some chemicals that will be formed over here. In this region, there will be certain chemical production. But this particular gap region will have some chemicals. These were converted from the electrical impulses of this particular neuron. Now these chemicals, beta, they are actually going to act as the stimulus for your next neuron. They are going to act as the stimulus for your next neuron, and as a result, it will acting as a stimulus, so it will bind on the receptors. Did you get the point? And from here again the same thing will happen. Since the stimulus is over here, it will convert into electrical impulse inside the neuron, into the cyton, then to the axon, then to the axon terminals, and again it cannot be released. Electrical impulse cannot be released. So first it will be converted into some other form, that is your chemical form. So chemicals will eventually just be present outside. So over here, did you see that there is a certain space that is present, and in that space, beta, the chemicals are being formed. These chemicals are being released from the previous neuron. So this particular gap is actually called as your synapse. This particular gap is actually called as your synapse, where one neuron, it actually releases its chemicals and the other neurons receives those chemicals via its dendrites. So that is the entire mechanism that takes place. So this particular gap is your synapse. Also, just to let you know, beta, these chemicals are now acting as a stimulus for this one. These chemicals are acting as a stimulus for the next neuron. So synapse is basically the space where the chemicals are being present and it is being released by the neuron from the axon terminals and act as a stimulus for the dendrites of the next neuron. That is a synapse. Now talking about a neuromuscular junction. See, neuromuscular junction, beta, it is also abbreviated as NMJ. NMJ. So I'm going to write NMJ over here. Now beta, NMJ, if I talk about it, this NMJ is actually made up of terms neuro and muscular. So neuro means neuron and muscular means muscle. That means it is a neuro and a muscle junction. Junction means meeting of two things. Meeting of two things, where two things actually meet, right? So neuron and muscle meet at a particular point, that is called as neuromuscular junction. See, this is a neuron, this is a neuron, and over here there will be some muscle that will be present. Okay, let us see, this is a muscle. Let us see, this is a muscle. Okay, and this muscle, beta, do you see the axon terminals are actually touching the muscle? The axon terminals are over here touching the muscle. If you can see, at these points it is touching the muscle. So this particular region, this particular area is actually called as neuromuscular junction, where the neuron is actually contacting the muscle. Okay, so the point of contact of the neuron and the muscle will be called as neuromuscular junction. Very, very simple, I think it is very easy to understand. This is your neuron. Specifically, bola jaye to it is your motor neuron. Why motor? I will explain it to you in the coming slides. This is your muscle, and the point of contact of these two is your NMJ. Now think about it, what will happen since it has axon terminals. That means the electrical signal will be eventually released out in the form of some chemicals. So these chemicals will be dusted off on the muscle. as like they will be dusted off on the muscle. Once they are on the muscle, they will cause the muscle to contract or relax or whatever the function that they have, and then muscle will eventually perform the response. So this is your effector muscle, and the response is your actual behavior that is generated. I hope it is clear. Now let us read the same kind of information that we have studied so far. Okay, a neuron is the basic structural and functional unit of the nervous system, है ना? It is the basic structural and functional unit of the nervous system. It is the longest cell in the human body. Longest means in terms of length. Okay, not largest. Largest is actually in terms of size. Longest is actually in terms of the length. Neurons help in receiving the information. From where do they receive? From the receptors. They process the information in the cyton, in the axon, and transmitting through the axon terminals. Okay, now talking about dendrites, these are the branch parts, pretty much like the roots of a plant or a tree. They receive the messages, very important. Sometimes it is asked, what do the dendrites do? They receive message and pass it to the cell body. Now cell body basically controls the cell, and it has all the different organelles, also the cytoplasm. Talking about axon, a tube-like part that carries the nerve impulse away from the cell body. So it will simply carry the nerve impulse, nothing else. Talking about nerve endings, but nerve endings are actually your axon terminals only, and they are the branched end that will pass the message to the next neuron or the muscle, depending upon, right, depending on the condition. If over there is presence of next neuron, so it will pass the information to the next neuron. And what if there is no neuron? After the neuron there is muscle, so it will pass the information to the muscle. So depending upon what condition is there, it can either pass the information to the next neuron or to the muscle. Got it, everyone? Now these are some important terms that you need to remember. Firstly, talking about stimulus. Stimuli is actually your plural term. Okay, it is any change that causes a reaction in the body. For example, if you instantly touch a hot pan, so the temperature caused the change, the heat caused a change in your body. That is actually your stimulus. Example, heat from hot pan, ringing of a school bell. Remember the example? And even sudden bright sunlight. Receptors actually detect the stimulus. For we have different receptors for different kind of stimulus. We will cover this part just in the next particular slide. So different kinds of receptor, not to worry, I've just marked a star over here so that you know that we will cover it. Okay, effector muscle are actually the muscles that are going to perform the function. Okay, for example, if I talk about this particular case, this is going to be the effector muscle because it will cause the hand to move. So over here, when you talk about effector, these are muscle or gland that will carry out the action or the response. For example, any muscle that will help in pulling the hand away. Response is the actual behavior or the actual action that is being shown with respect to the stimulus. For example, withdrawing a hand quickly, and even sweating on a bright sunny day or sweating right after you have performed some kind of physical activity. Okay, now these are certain points to remember. That first, information transfer takes place in this particular manner. From the stimulus, it moves to the receptor that is present on the dendrite. Where is the receptor present, beta? On the dendrite. Okay, from there it enters into the cell body. From the cell body, it will go to the axon. From the axon, it will actually move to the axon terminals and then synapse. From the synapse, it depends whether it has to go to the next neuron or the effector muscle, and ultimately your response is being generated. So this is the entire sequence of events that you need to remember, so that if somebody asks you in exam, you know what these things are. Now these are certain definitions of terms, that is basically synapse and also your neuromuscular junction. Although neuromuscular junction definition is not so frequently asked, but you should still be aware of what they actually mean. So synapse is the gap between two neurons through which the nerve impulse is carried or passed on chemically, that means in the form of chemicals. A neuromuscular junction is the junction between a motor neuron and a muscle where the impulse causes muscular movement, because the axon, it actually, for example, if this is the axon terminal, it touches the muscle over here. So this particular point will be called as the neuromuscular junction. So the terminals will now release certain chemicals, and those chemicals will cause the contraction of the muscle, or depending on the information that the chemical has, the movement will be caused. So these are certain basic terms. Now think about it, students, that you know nerve cells or neurons have receptors that help them in sensing the information. But tell me, does the neuron of your eye need to have receptor for light or for taste? I think you will also say it needs to have receptor for eyes, because that is how we are responsible for our vision. For taste, it should not be present because eyes are not responsible for taste. Likewise, the neurons of your nose should have the receptor for smell. The neurons of your tongue should have the receptor for taste. The neurons of your ear should have receptor for sound. The neurons of your skin should have the receptor for pain or temperature, right? So every sense organ has neurons, and the type of neuron will have receptor, but the receptor will vary depending on the function. Okay, so every sense organ will have a particular type of receptor depending on the stimuli that it can process. Got my point? Let us see over here. Every sense organ will have a receptor beta, but that receptor will depend on the stimuli that it can process. Got my point? For example, tongue. Tongue can basically sense taste. So the receptor that are present in the tongue are actually called as gustatory receptors. Gustate, taste. Gustate, taste. Remember like this, okay? So they are present in the tongue. Very, very important, okay? Nose can actually have the sense of smell. So the stimuli is actually smell. And the kind of receptors that will be present are called as olfactory receptors. These two are extremely important from your exam point of view, that which kind of receptors are actually present in the tongue and nose. Or the question can be asked in reverse manner also. Gustatory receptors are present in dash, olfactory are present in dash. So you should remember both ways. Although all of these receptors are important, but the highly or the most probable questions actually arise from these two sense organs. Talking about skin, because skin can actually sense temperature also. That means change in the temperature can be easily sensed, and for that the receptors are actually called as thermoreceptors. T for temperature, T for thermoreceptor. T for temperature, T for thermoreceptor. Skin can also sense pain. Like temperature was sensed when you touched a hot pen, right? And skin can also sense pain. For example, if a very sharp object touches your skin, pierces in your skin, you will feel the pain over there. For that, the receptors are called as nociceptors. Okay. Eyes can sense the stimuli to be light. So the receptors that are present in the eye will be called as photoreceptors. Ear can detect the stimuli sound. So the receptors that are present in the ears are called as phenoreceptors. All these lists you should remember. Obviously, you will get it in notes also. But the most important two that you should remember are the receptors that are present in the sense organs, tongue and nose. Now, moving to the next topic, that is actions. What are actions actually? You must have heard the term action, I think, when you watch a movie or when you see a film shooting. Over there, they say lights, camera, action. But do these actions actually also exist in biology? The answer is yes. Actions also take place in biology, but they are not your simple lights, camera action. These actions are of various types, students. Firstly, there are voluntary actions. For example, if you are watching the video, if you are making notes, or if you are scrolling Instagram reels, or if you are having something, eating something, all of these actions are under your control. You are able to decide whether you want to do these actions or not. So they are called as voluntary actions. Okay, and since you have to make a decision to do these particular actions, that means you have to make a decision, so you have to think. And when you have to think, that means over here what is present? Brain is present. So thinking is involved, brain is also involved. Over here you can see like walking, exercising, yoga, speaking, talking, running, everything is voluntary. Whatever is being done by choice is actually a voluntary action. Then the next category of action is actually involuntary actions. So involuntary action, students, are those that you cannot control, that are taking place in your body when you are doing something or when you are not doing anything. For example, if you are sleeping, they are still happening in your body. You have no control over them. Your body is still pumping the blood, your lungs are still able to breathe, and then your blood is also able to transport everything to different parts of the body. Your waste blood is still being filtered. So you have no control over it. You might think that you are sleeping, but still your body is working. Okay, these are called as involuntary actions, and since you don't have to think a lot about it, you don't have to make a decision, so brain is very rarely involved in that. So these are basically your involuntary actions that are not under our control. The next type of action, students, they are actually called as reflex actions. So reflex action, beta, they happen very quickly. They happen within a fraction of a second. For example, if you touch a hot object, you instantly remove your hand. Or if you sneeze, or if somebody just brings a bright torch in front of you, you are going to hide your face. Or this is you when there is a bright sunny day. So reflex actions, beta, they are very, very sudden, quick, instantaneous. You don't get the time to think. But let me also share something very, very amazing, that these actions are also involuntary in nature. These actions are also involuntary in nature, which means that they are somewhat similar to involuntary actions. You might think, then ma'am, why are we making a separate category for reflex actions? If they are involuntary, why don't we put the reflex action and involuntary under the same category? But there are certain differences, to be very, very specific. Okay, involuntary actions are very, very slow and they are taking place at all times. But reflex actions are very fast and take place for a very short duration of time. For example, if you touch a hot pan, so quickly you will respond, and only for a short duration. It's not that you are going to respond for weeks and weeks when you have touched that hot object. No, right? So they are very, very quick and sudden, and they are very slow and continuous. You don't have to give a stimulus over in involuntary actions. But for reflex actions, you do need a stimulus. You need to give an information, you need to have some change in the environment for which reflex can work. Okay, and reflex actions are also, since they are involuntary, your brain is not involved, spinal cord is involved. So similar kind of things I have mentioned in the table over here, you need to understand, because these differences are certain times asked in the exams, sometimes between voluntary, involuntary, voluntary reflex, involuntary reflex are the most frequently asked differences. Okay, let us try to understand this one by one. Okay, talking about voluntary actions, basically done by our own will, so they are voluntary. Do we require a stimulus for them? No, we don't require a stimulus. Do we have to think about them? Yes, I have to think what I have to speak. I have to think what I have to write. I have to think if I have to make a decision. And when thinking is involved, obviously brain will play a very important role. These can be slow or moderate, right? If I'm talking, if I'm speaking, everything that I'm doing is at a very slow and moderate pace. For example, if you decide to run, so you will slowly increase your pace also. So they can be slow, moderate, or even fast. For example, writing, walking, and speaking. Involuntary actions actually happen without our will. We do not control them. We can't control them, by the way. They are not necessarily requiring a stimulus. They will happen on its own. Thinking is not involved, definitely. If thinking is not involved, then brain will control and regulate the function. Okay, so since thinking is not involved, you might think that brain completely vanishes. No, brain has a role to play. Okay, they are usually slow and continuous. For example, heartbeat, digestion, breathing are certain examples of your involuntary actions. Talking about reflex actions, beta, reflex actions are those actions that take place automatically, very suddenly, very instantly. Okay, and you don't have the time to think about it, so obviously they are involuntary in nature. Do you require a stimulus? Yes, you require a stimulus. Do you have to think about it? No. If it is taking place very suddenly, very instantly, you can't think about it. There is no time to think about it. Okay. Since you can't think, so brain is not involved. Very fast, for example, pulling a hand away from a hot object, or even blinking, or even sneezing. Now let us move to the next topic, where we will be studying the mechanism of reflex action. To understand this, firstly let us assume that this is a hand, obviously, and it has got the stimulus of heat or pain because it accidentally touched a hot object. So what will happen is, firstly, this information or stimulus will be received by your sensory neuron. It will be received by the first neuron, that will be called as sensory neuron. Why is it called sensory? Because it is actually present over here in the sensory organ. Somewhere here it was present and it got the stimulus. So sensory neuron actually received the information. From the sensory neuron, beta, it will be passed on to the next neuron, that is called as the interneuron. It is called as the interneuron, or you can say relay neuron. Interneuron or relay neuron is actually present in your spinal cord. It is actually present in your CNS, and that too where? In the spinal cord region. So I'm going to write over here spinal cord. This is in spinal cord. The information then went to the spinal cord. From there, the information was given to another neuron, that is called as motor neuron, which is present inside the muscle. This neuron is actually present inside the muscle. Okay. Now, once the motor neuron has received the information, what will it do? Simply, it will obviously pass on the information to the muscle. Over here, let us say this is the muscle, this is the muscle, okay. So this will pass on the information to the muscle, that is your effector muscle, and effector muscle will cause the response. It will generate the response and it will pull away the hand from the object. So this is how your entire reflex action I can say function, okay. So firstly, information or stimulus was received by basically your hand. Over there in the hand there was sensory neuron, so it basically sends the information. Then over here again you know that synapse will be formed. In this region synapse will be formed, right? Because this is the gap between two neurons, so synapse is being formed. From there information is being transferred into interneuron or relay neuron in the spinal cord. Again over here synapse will be formed. So this is your synapse which will pass on the information to the motor neuron. From the motor neuron it will be passed to the effector muscle. Effector muscle is the muscle that will perform the function. From the effector muscle response will be generated. One thing to mention is that when the motor neuron beta touches the effector muscle, it actually forms NMJ over here because the axon terminal touches the muscle surface. So this over here will lead to the formation of your NMJ. That is why in the definition we said that motor neuron at the junction of the motor neuron and the muscle is called as NMJ. Okay, so simply I'm going to erase this so that things can be clear to you. Understanding the same thing will with the help of a diagram will make it even easier for all of you guys. But before that, let us understand what is reflex arc. See, the mechanism of reflex action or the pathway followed by the reflex action is called as reflex arc. As simple as that. The pathway or the mechanism followed by the reflex action is called as reflex arc. So it is the pathway through which reflex action takes place. What is the flow chart of how the reflex action take place? From the stimulus information will be transferred to the receptor. From the receptor it will be passed to the sensory neuron which will pass the information further to the relay neuron in the spinal cord. This will pass the information to the motor neuron that is present in the muscle, which will pass it on to the effector muscle, and over here NMJ or I can say neuromuscular junction will be formed and ultimately response will take place. So this is the entire mechanism of your reflex arc. Simply remember the pathway that is followed by the reflex action is called as reflex arc. And now let us move to certain questions. The first question that we have is a 1 mark question, and the question states that electrical impulse travels in a neuron from. Think about it. From which direction does the impulse transmission takes place? Firstly, the option says nerve ending. No, it can never start with nerve ending. Wrong. Yes, it definitely starts from dendrite. Absolutely correct, because dendrite has the receptors. But after the dendrite, does it go to cell body, axon and nerve ending? Absolutely correct, because dendrite will connect to your cyton, cyton connects to your axon and nerve ending. So option B is absolutely true, right? Option B is absolutely true over here. Cell body dendrites not possible. Dendrite to axon does not happen. Dendrite to cell body, then to axon and axon terminals or nerve endings. Moving forward, in a synapse, chemical signal is transmitted from which direction to which direction? Okay, synapse, you know, it is the gap where the chemicals are being released. So who releases the chemicals? The axon terminals of neuron 1. It is actually released by the axon terminals or nerve endings of neuron 1. Okay, and it is actually received by the dendrites of neuron 2. The next neuron will actually be responsible for receiving. So over here is your synapse where chemicals are being present. Now think, dendrite end of one neuron. No beta, dendrite to receives the information. So this is wrong. Axon to cell, no, not possible. Cell body to axonal end, not possible. Axonal end of one neuron, basically axonal end automatically means that it is the axonal terminal end. To dendritic end, obviously to the dendrite, absolutely correct. So option D is the correct option over here, and this is also a very important question because it can be asked in the form of a statement based question also, right? Now, question number 3, very important question. Please mark some stars over here because this is again very famously asked from this particular chapter. The question says, what is a reflex arc and why have reflex arcs developed in humans or animals? Trace the sequence of events which will occur when you suddenly touch a hot object. A similar kind of question in OR format was being asked. Define reflex actions. With the help of a flow chart, show the path of a reflex action such as sneezing, and both of them beta are very recently asked questions in 2024 itself. Let us answer this one by one. Talking about reflex arc. Reflex arc, obviously it is the pathway followed by reflex actions, right? Why is it so evolved in animals? So that animals can make instant reactions, can protect themselves from danger. For example, if you touch a hot object and then you get the response later on after 2 days, so you will automatically harm yourself, है ना? And you don't want that. So to prevent or protect itself from danger, these arcs are very well developed in animals. And since they involve spinal cord, they are very fast. Yes. One thing to also remember from over here is that they are only involving spinal cord. Firstly, spinal cord is involved. Brain is not directly involved, but later on, this information goes to the brain so that brain can make a memory. So since spinal cord is involved, the action is very fast. Later the message goes to the brain, as you can see over here also. Later the message will go to the brain so that it will tell the brain to make a memory, so that whenever you see a hot object next time, you don't touch it out of anywhere, right? Now, these are the reasons that why reflex arcs are actually being developed. And what is the sequence of event when you touch? Obviously, we have just studied. Again, define reflex action, all the actions that are involuntary, very sudden, instantaneous, and they do require a stimuli are called as reflex actions. With the help of a flow chart, show the path of a reflex action such as sneezing. See, over here I have written everything. Reflex arc is the pathway that is being followed by a reflex action. They have evolved to perform quick actions, protecting the body from harmful situations, occur without thinking, so obviously they can save some time and you can protect yourselves. What does happen when you touch a hot object? Receptor will detect, sensory neuron will take it to the spinal cord. From there it will be given to the interneuron. Interneuron or relay neuron will give it to the motor neuron, which will further give it to the effector muscle, and then response is being generated. Very basic. Coming to what happens eventually when a person sneezes, because might be possible that some dust particles enter. So dust from the air or the wind will actually act as a stimulus. From there it will be received by the sensory neuron receptors, obviously, which are basically your olfactory receptors. Then it will move to the sensory neuron, again to the relay neuron or the interneuron in the spinal cord, followed by motor neuron, and this will actually cause your chest and the nasal muscles to produce a response that is seen in the form of sneezing. Got it? So every time the muscle will not be a hand muscle, because when you are sneezing, what has it got to do with the hand muscle? Firstly, your chest muscles should contract. Okay, so moving forward to our next topic, that is actually your human brain. Till now we have studied so many things about nervous system, types of nervous system, neuron, reflex actions, so many actions, but now we are actually going to study about human brain, the control center of our body. So all the different activities that you were able to see till now are very well coordinated with the help of human brain. But let me also tell you beta that human brain is not this or not this. These are actually bones, if you can feel. Human brain is present inside these bones. When these bones are removed, inside is the human brain. And it is very sensitive, soft and delicate. So it has to be protected in a bony covering, okay? It has to be protected in bones, so that when somebody just does this to you because you have not done your homework, it doesn't change its shape, right? That is why it is very well protected in a cover that is called as a bony box. As you can see over here, these are all your bones. All these structures around these are actually your bones, present over here also, but just to show you, it is shown in the half side, okay? Now these are your bony box beta, which will actually protect the brain from any kind of injuries, any kind of shocks. It is going to try to protect the brain, okay? Inside this, do you see these blue colored layers? Do you see these blue colored layers? Beta, when you open the brain bony box, you will find these blue colored layers, which are actually called as meninges. They are called as meninges. These meninges are also some protective covering that actually protects the brain from certain kind of shocks, okay? And between the bony box and the meninges is actually present your cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid, which is also called CSF. CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, okay. So this fluid also acts as a shock absorber. So if any injury takes place, bony box protects it, spine, CSF protects it, and then your meninges also helps in the protection. So I think you have also partially covered one more topic that we were ideally supposed to cover ahead, but the protection of brain, I think now you have done partially, so it is going to be easy for you. Now your brain, beta, actually does look like a walnut, that you know, but it is made up of two different parts, okay. So over here it is presented to you like this. These are your two different parts of the brain. This is actually the left hemisphere of the brain. This is actually the left hemisphere of the brain. Each part is called a hemisphere, and this is the right hemisphere of the brain. And both of these parts, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, are actually protected, or basically I can say they are protected obviously by the cranium or the bony box, but they are also connected, beta. These parts are not individual, they are connected, and they are joined together by a band of fibers called as corpus callosum. This is your corpus callosum. Got it? This is your corpus callosum that will join the two hemispheres, okay. Now if I want to show you what's inside the brain, for example, if these are the two hemispheres, I separate them and I'm going to show you this part. So in the next slide, what you're going to see is this particular part of the brain, okay, the sideways part. Now human brain is actually better divided into three different parts, that is forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Got it? Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain are the three different parts that you can see. Forebrain, obviously as visible from the image, is the largest part of the brain. This is the largest part of the brain, है ना, ये सबसे बड़ा part है. Over here is midbrain, small, and then you have the hindbrain, which actually connects to the spinal cord over here. These are the three different parts of your brain. By the way, this particular region is your corpus callosum that we just talked about, na, that connects the two hemispheres. This is actually your corpus callosum. If you want to note it down, you can, that this is your corpus, right? Corpus callosum. These are the band of fibers that will connect the two hemispheres, okay. Now one by one we will understand each of these different parts and understand their functions also. So human brain is obviously the main control and coordinating center of the body. It will do every possible thing that you can think of, thinking, controlling voluntary actions, involuntary actions, making some decisions, guiding the body, instructing the body what to do. Everything is basically done by your brain itself, even controlling emotions. Helps for regulatory of involuntary and voluntary, we just studied. And two halves are called right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, connected by corpus callosum. These are the basic important points that you need to remember. Talking about forebrain, beta, forebrain is further divided into three parts. First is cerebrum, second is thalamus, third is hypothalamus. So these are the three different parts of the forebrain itself, okay. Do you see this highly convoluted portion, highly coiled portion, beta, this particular portion? This is actually your cerebrum. This is your cerebrum, which is obviously the largest part of your forebrain also. Now to make things easier for you, just remember that cerebrum is responsible for intelligence. So anything that you can think of possibly with intelligence, like creative thinking, mathematical skills, analytical skill, problem solving skill, everything is being controlled by your cerebrum, okay. Exactly, that is what is the thinking part of the brain, problem solving skills, analytical skills, reasoning, logical things, and voluntary actions control are also done by your cerebrum. Then comes the next part of the brain, that is actually called as your thalamus, okay. Over here, beta, over here is your thalamus, somewhere over here, okay. Although it is not mentioned, let me write, over here is your thalamus, and below which, somewhere over here, is your hypothalamus, okay. It is your hypothalamus. Let me explain the two terms to you so that you can just get done with all the terms at once. Thalamus and hypothalamus. Hypo means below. Hypo means below. This is your thalamus, the above portion. The portion below will be called below the thalamus. So the name is hypothalamus. Got it, everybody? Now talking about thalamus. Now talking about the functions of thalamus. See, thalamus is actually a relay center which brings information from the sensory organs and gives it to the cerebrum. Takes the information from the cerebrum and gives it to the sense organs. Brings information from the sensory organs, gives to the cerebrum. Takes from the cerebrum and gives it to the sensory organs. So a relay center that passes information from the to and fro the cerebrum. Talking about hypothalamus, this portion of the brain, beta, it is actually responsible for controlling your thirst, your hunger, even your body temperature. That is being done by your hypothalamus. Now coming to the next part of the brain, that is actually your midbrain. From the name itself, it is clear that will be present somewhere in the center. So this particular part actually represents your midbrain, beta. This is your midbrain, and midbrain does not have so many functions. It only contains mainly some involuntary functions that are not under your control, and some reflex actions that are basically related to vision as well as sound. That is all about your midbrain, and even questions are not so frequently asked from midbrain. Coming to the last part of the brain, that is the hindbrain, present somewhere over here, beta. Now when I talk about hindbrain, it has again three parts. Firstly, it is cerebellum, then it has pons, and then it has medulla oblongata. Okay, let us try to understand each one of them from the diagram. This particular portion, a flower-like portion that you see over here, beta, it is actually called as your cerebellum. This is your cerebellum, and cerebellum is actually responsible for maintaining your body posture, maintaining the balance of your body. For example, if you are doing yoga, aerobics, gymnastics, or if you are riding a bicycle, every balancing activity that is being done or maintained in your body is done with the help of cerebellum. So maintaining a posture is your cerebellum's responsibility. Sometimes the cerebellum of a person might not be so well developed, and as a result the balancing of the body of that particular person could be a little off the chart. Okay, now talking about pons, actually pons, beta, over here it is present, somewhere over here is actually your pons, and below that over here is actually your medulla oblongata. Okay, this is the labeling. It might come in your exam certain time, so please remember these things. Now talking about pons, beta, it actually helps in controlling the breathing rate. To increase the breathing or to decrease the breathing is actually done with the help of your pons. Also asked in exam, so please remember the term regulating breathing. Okay, that means to increase or decrease the rate of breathing. Then talking about medulla, beta, medulla controls your involuntary activities like your blood pressure, like your vomiting, like your heart beating, and then your breathing also. It controls that. Okay, all of this is being done by your medulla oblongata. So all this more or less are the different parts of the brain. There is so much information that is more to it, but for now I think that is enough, because boards usually ask the question from these areas. Otherwise, for more information we will cover that in higher grades. Now moving further, and this is basically related to the protection of nervous tissue, since you know that nervous tissue is very sensitive, brain is very sensitive, and even the spinal cord that is a part of CNS needs to be protected, so that in case of any injury, CNS is not under harm. CNS makes the decisions, passes the information, so CNS has to be protected at all cost, for which we have a protection system for the brain, and brain is actually protected in a bony box, a box made of bones. It is protected in a box made of bones. That box made of bones, you can also call this as a bony box, right? And the actual name of that box is beta cranium. It is called as cranium. Now you know why the nerves that come out from the brain are called as cranial nerves, right? Because it actually come out from the cranium. So over here the nerves come out like this from the cranium. That is why we call this as your cranial nerves, right? Very easy to understand. Okay, now talking about your spinal cord, it is also protected with a very high system of vertebral column. So the spinal cord is actually protected with the help of vertebral column. It is present in the protective structure that is called as vertebral column. Correct? Now just to make things easier for you, beta, let us see if this is your brain. Brain is actually protected inside a cranium. This is the cranium, and then which is a bony box, and then between the brain and the cranium, beta, there are some protective coverings over here, like we talked about now. These are your meninges. These are your meninges, soft layers, and over here, not very soft, they are tough also, and over here you see that there is certain fluid. between the cranium and this, and between the meninges. This is called beta cerebrospinal fluid. This is called as cerebrospinal fluid. This fluid is termed as CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. I'm going to write it over here. It's called as CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. So even if you get an injury, a minor injury, the cranium, meninges and the CSF all together can protect it. Similar thing is present in your spinal cord also. Over here you extend your spinal cord. So this CSF is present there also, beta. This CSF is actually present over here also. In this region also the CSF just runs through. So your spinal cord is also well protected by your CSF somewhere in this region. Got my point? This is how it runs. Just to explain it better, I have made a diagram over here. Okay, firstly let us read this. Firstly, we have brain protected in a bony box. That bony box is called as cranium. It is a box simply made up of bones that you can remember. Bony box called as cranium. Likewise, spinal cord is actually protected in a vertebral column, which is also called as your backbone, and this backbone actually protects your spinal cord from any sort of injury. This is the overall representation. Now talking about the brain and the protection, again with the help of a diagram so that things can be easier. Do you see this particular is your cranium? Okay, this particular is the cranium. Inside over here is your brain, which is very soft and delicate, so needs to be protected very well. And inside of which over here are your meninges. These are your meninges. And then somewhere over here is actually your cerebrospinal fluid that is being present. Somewhere over here between this region will be your cerebrospinal fluid that will be present, also runs till the spinal cord. You don't need to remember these names because they are not so frequently asked. But if you want to gain some additional information, you can mention that the names of the meninges are dua mater, arachnoid mater and pia mater. Although the chances of the questions being asked from this particular point is very less. Now, coming to certain questions, let us practice. Name the part of the brain which is responsible for the following actions. Maintaining posture and balance. Beta, maintaining posture and balance is done with the help of cerebellum. You know now, for any kind of body balancing, cerebellum is responsible. Beating of the heart, it is an involuntary function controlled by what? Medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. Then we have thinking. Thinking is responsible for some intelligence, some problem solving. So cerebrum. Then we have blood pressure, again medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata will be responsible for your BP also. Vomiting also. Breathing rate also. This is a basic, and again asked in 2023, so not a very old question. Now, what constitutes the central and the peripheral nervous system, and what are the components of CNS? Okay, how are the components of CNS actually protected? Which signals will get disrupted in case of a spinal cord injury? Let us solve this one by one. Constituents of the CNS and the PNS, beta, firstly let us write for the CNS. CNS actually has your brain and spinal cord. So we have brain, we also have spinal cord. This is your CNS. Talking about PNS, it has your nerves only. So what are those nerves? We have cranial nerves that come out from the brain, 12 pairs, and then we have spinal nerves that come out from the spinal cord, 31 pairs. Okay, this is the first part of the question. I think we are done and dusted with the first part. Okay, now coming to the second part of the question. How are the components of CNS protected? Again, we just studied. The brain is protected with the help of cranium, and the spinal cord is protected with the help of vertebral column. Right, this is your vertebral column that protects the spinal cords. Okay, now the last part of the question. It says that which kind of actions will be disrupted in case of a spinal cord injury. Obviously, in the cases where spinal cord is involved, the function will disrupt if the spinal cord is injured. And where is the spinal cord involved, beta? In reflex actions. So this is your last part of the question. That is your spinal cord injury will lead to reflex actions disruption. Reflex actions will be disrupted. So this is how you have to mention so that you can secure full marks. Again, a question from the year 2020. Okay, now moving forward, We have control and coordination. See, talking about control and coordination, we have completed the first part, that is this particular region, neural control done by neurons and through nervous system. But now we will study how the control and coordination is maintained with the help of the other system that we studied in the beginning, that is called as endocrine system. So students, you know that in endocrine system the response is very slow but it is long lived. It is actually done with the help of hormonal control that involves hormones, and that comes under the category of system that is called as endocrine system. Got it? Now, not to worry, I know you have no idea about what is endocrine system, what is hormones, what are chemicals. Let us understand. See beta, these are some group of cells of your body. These are some group of cells of your body. Okay, they have produced certain chemicals. And these chemicals are later on secreted outside these cells. The chemicals are later on secreted outside these cells. So these are your chemicals. Okay, since these chemicals are outside the cell, they have nowhere to go. So what do? They enter into the bloodstream. This is your bloodstream, or I can say simply blood vessel. Okay, and from there beta, they eventually reach the target organ. From there they reach the target organ, and once they reach the target organ, they bring about the response that they were supposed to make. Like for example, we can say responsible for growth. Okay, that is the simple mechanism of your endocrine system, that a group of cells produce some chemicals, release those chemicals outside. Since these chemicals have nowhere to go, they enter the bloodstream. From the bloodstream they go to the respective target organ, and then they cause the response. Okay, now just to make it tough for you, they have called this endocrine system by giving it a new name. So what will I do? I will also give you some names of these particular terms. That's all. Okay, so these are firstly beta, if you see group of cells, they are called as glands. The chemicals that they make are called as hormones. These hormones will eventually enter the bloodstream, reach to the target organ and cause the response. That is all. So glands and hormones you have to remember. Okay, so endocrine system beta is actually made up of endocrine glands. And what is the speciality about endocrine glands? That they make the hormones. Very, very important. They make the hormones and release in the bloodstream. These are the major functions. Okay, now the question comes, ma'am, are all glands endocrine in nature? No beta, there are certain other glands also. They are called as exocrine gland. Okay, now exocrine gland beta, they do not make hormones, they make something else. They are called as enzymes. Let us understand. See, talking about your first thing, that is your endocrine gland. Endocrine gland beta, they have no duct. Very important. What is a duct? A tube through which something flows. Like in your homes also, in your locality also, water flows through pipes, right? So they don't have beta any duct, and that is why the hormone that they secrete enters into the blood. If suppose there was some kind of duct, if they had some kind of duct, they would simply use that duct to release these chemicals to the target organ directly. They could skip this step, है ना? But they don't have a tube, they don't have a duct, so they have to release outside, enters into the blood, then to the target organ. These are your endocrine glands. Okay, now this is how they act on the target organ. Coming to exocrine gland beta, they do have a duct. So since they have a duct, they will directly release it to the organs. But what do they make beta? They make enzyme, and through the duct they will reach the local site or any particular organ. That is how endo and exocrine glands work. Now simply in this particular session you have to study about the endocrine glands, that is in your syllabus. So we will go through different types of endocrine glands, what are their locations, and if any deficiency is caused by the lack of hormones they produce. Firstly it is pituitary gland. No worries, explaining with very, very basic example. You studied the hypothalamus in the brain, है ना? In the forebrain there was a structure called hypothalamus, right? So this is your hypothalamus beta. From the hypothalamus, there exists a particular gland towards its tail. This is called as your pituitary gland. This particular gland is called as your pituitary gland. Now, pituitary gland beta actually produces a hormone that is called as growth hormone. From the name itself, it is clear it is responsible for the growth of the body. है ना? So, you want the growth of the body to be very, very equal and even. So where will this growth hormone go from the blood? Its target will be with different body organs. So hence it will go to the different body organs. Okay, and over there it will cause the development of muscle, development of bones, overall a good posture it will develop. But certain times what happens is the growth hormone could either be present in very less amount in the body. When the pituitary is not functioning properly, there could be a deficiency sorry, there could be a deficiency of growth hormone. If there is deficiency beta, in that case the body will not develop properly, and there will be a disorder that is called as dwarfism. In dwarfism, the person has actually a very short stature of the body. The body is not very well developed. Okay, it's a very small heighted person and underdeveloped body parts. Whereas when there is excess amount of growth hormone, which is also not good for the body, it will lead to giantism, where the person will be extremely vast, wide and huge, like khali. है ना? So the body is very huge. That is how the person looks when there is deficiency or excess of growth hormone. That is about your first gland. Very easy. Now, talking about thyroid gland. So you know trachea firstly. You know trachea, that is your windpipe we studied in respiration. This is where your windpipe is located. Can you see? This is beta your windpipe structure. Over here C-shaped cartilaginous rings are also present. I hope you remember because it is a very important question. Around which can you see this butterfly shaped gland? This butterfly shaped gland, this is actually your thyroid gland. Okay, this gland is termed as thyroid gland, and this produces a hormone called as thyroxine hormone. Very easy to remember. T for thyroid gland, T for thyroxine hormone. Now this thyroxine hormone from here will enter into the bloodstream, and then will it reach to different body organs. But what does it do after reaching there? It causes the metabolism of protein and fats. Metabolism means breakdown or synthesis. So basically this, when metabolism will take place, when the proteins will either break down or will form, that means they are basically responsible in the growth of the body, because you know that proteins and fats are actually received as nutrients. So when they will be absorbed, there will be growth of the body, right? So carbohydrate protein metabolism, which is responsible for the best balance of the body growth, right? Alongside that, it also helps in maintaining the body temperature. But a disorder also comes that if the thyroxine is produced in very less amounts, it causes a disease called as goiter, where the neck of the person gets swollen. I will show you in the next slide that when there is deficiency of thyroxine hormone, this is how the neck starts looking. It is swollen. But let us understand how this deficiency happens, and then you can also understand this statement. Okay, let us write this simply. Firstly, you know that thyroxine is beta actually responsible for the breakdown of fat plus protein. So I can say fats and protein metabolism. And fats and protein metabolism, once it takes place, it will also cause the growth of the body. Okay, but to make this thyroxine, you actually need iodine. Okay, you need to have iodine in your body. And where does the iodine come from? It comes from salt in your diet. Okay, so if you consume good amount of salt in your diet, it will release iodine in your body. This iodine will make thyroxine, which will cause the fat and protein metabolism, and eventually the body will grow. This is the normal mechanisms. But sometimes beta, what happens is that whenever we consume salt that lacks iodine, so salt lacks iodine, in that case thyroxine will not be formed. In that case, protein and fat metabolism will not take place and growth will not occur. And then the neck will get swollen. This particular disease is called as goiter. This is called as goiter. The whole mechanism now I have made it in front of you, that this is why the consumption of iodized salt in your diet, this is why the consumption of iodized salt is advisable, because it is responsible for the synthesis of thyroxine hormone. So whenever there is no iodine, that means thyroxine will not be formed, metabolism will not take place, growth will not take place, and goiter disease will occur. I hope you are able to understand these things, right? So simply what I'm going to do is erase the cross marks, okay, so that you can make it down in your notes copy. Just labeling it down for you guys. What are the important points you need to remember? Iodized salt for the synthesis of thyroxine hormone. In the absence of iodine, thyroxine not produced, causing goiter disease. This is the goiter disease. Okay, swollen neck. Talking about adrenal gland, again very simple to understand. Adrenal beta, adrenal, renal means kidney, renal means kidney, anything related to kidney has the word renal. So now you can understand that renal is basically showing that these glands are located over the kidneys. So adrenal glands are actually found as a cap on the kidneys, like the cap of a Santa Claus. This is how it looks like, okay? These are your adrenal glands. Now very important from board's perspective. Let me make you memorize this with the help of an example. Do you see this image over here? Do you see this image over here? This particular boy saw a snake and got scared away. And this is what has happened. So when you see a snake, beta, you know that it is a sign of danger. You shout and you run away. So over that time, what would have happened? The heartbeat would have increased. The breathing rate would have increased. Body must be sweating. Your pupils must be dilated. And then the body must be flowing the blood to the skeletal system so that all of your hands and legs are active so that you can perform some movement. That is what happens. So that are the symptoms of your adrenaline hormone. These are the functions: to increase the heartbeat, increase the breathing rate, to cause the sweating, to cause papillary dilation, to cause blood flow to the skeletal system so as to allow movement. So you see over here, this particular guy, as soon as he saw this snake, he got all these symptoms. Because of what? Because of the hormone that your adrenal gland made, that was adrenaline. So the hormone produces beta called as adrenaline, and it is also called as stress hormone or emergency hormone. Called as stress hormone or emergency hormone. These are the two names of this particular hormone, not because they cause stress or they cause emergency, but because they are released in a stressful situation or in an emergency situation. Over here, this is an emergency situation. So adrenaline got released and it will target hearts, lungs and blood vessels. What will it do? It will increase the heart rate. When the heart rate will increase, beta, that means the contraction, relaxation of heart will be more and more oxygen will be pumped to the body so that aerobic respiration occurs and energy can be produced. Okay. It will increase the breathing rate. When the breathing rate will increase, that means the diaphragm and the ribs will contract and relax even faster. More oxygen delivered to the cells, ATP production is more. Blood supply will be decreased to the digestive system because उस time पे खाना digest नहीं करना है, and the entire blood flow will go to the skin where different organs are present so that it can reach the skeletal muscles and actions can be done to protect the person itself. These are the different functions of your adrenaline hormone. Coming to the next gland, that is pancreas. Pancreas, can you see over here this leaf-like gland? This is your pancreas, beta. So it produces the hormone called as insulin, which reaches the blood and helps in maintaining the blood sugar level. Very basic. Hormone is insulin, reaches to the blood and there it helps in maintaining the blood sugar level. Okay, and if there is less amount of insulin, beta, it can cause a disease called as diabetes. You must have heard these diseases are very common nowadays, है ना? But how does this happen? Let us try to understand this with the help of a diagram first. So this is, let us assume, a blood vessel. This is your blood vessel. This is a blood vessel. And over here, your sugar is present, है ना? Sugar, which is nothing else but your glucose only. Sugar is nothing else but your glucose only. Now you know. So, what does your insulin hormone does? Your insulin that is produced by the pancreas, if the glucose amount is above a certain level, then insulin will convert the glucose, beta, it will convert the glucose into glycogen so that the level of glucose in the blood can be maintained. The level of glucose in the blood can be maintained. है ना, बात सही है ना? But in certain cases, if the pancreas are not functioning properly, insulin will not be produced. If insulin is not produced, then this glucose will not be converted into glycogen. This reaction will not take place, glycogen will not be formed. So glucose will increase in the blood, and increase of glucose or increase of sugar in the blood leads to diabetes. That is how simple it is, okay? So insulin actually regulates the blood sugar level in our blood. or I can say in our body also, right? Talking about testis, testis is one kind of gland that is present only in males. I think you know this, although we are going to cover this in very detail in the next chapter. So I'm going to write only in males. Females don't have it, and since this is present in males, it is also responsible for making the males male. Okay, the hormone they secrete is called as testosterone, and now this testosterone, beta, what does it do? You know, during the time of puberty, there are many characteristics or many changes that take place in the males. For example, the body becomes very muscular, right? The voice becomes very deep. Body hair development, pubic hair development, sperm production takes place. All of this is actually done with the help of testosterone. So all these secondary sexual characteristics that takes place in males are because of testosterone. So development of the facial hair, pubic hair, body hair, tone becomes of the voice becomes deeper, muscular development and sperm production are different functions of testosterone. Likewise, we have other kind of gland that is present only in females, that is called as ovary. And since it is present only in females, it is also responsible for making the female a female. Okay, the hormones actually produced are called as estrogen. And what does this do? Again, at the time of puberty, females also undergo many changes. They develop body hair, pubic hair, and again the voice becomes very sharp. There is onset of menstrual cycle. So all these changes that takes place in the females during puberty are actually controlled by the hormone estrogen. Okay, so body hair development, development of sex organ, formation of mammary glands also, yes, definitely. Sharp pitch voice and menstrual cycle are the different changes that takes place with the help of your estrogen hormone produced by the ovary. This is a particular table that I have made so that you guys can have a glimpse at it and remember the things when exams are near. Instead of going through the lots and lots of notes, simply having a look at the table will help you. So each of this is being covered. Moving to the next hormones, actually these three hormones are not very frequently asked in the boards, but I have still mentioned it down. So since this we have not covered, we will just cover it right now because books usually don't deal with these diagrams very intensively. Okay, so talking about pineal gland, beta, pineal gland produces melatonin, and the hormone melatonin is responsible for your sleep-wake cycle. Do you know that sometimes you only get sleep at a particular time, let us say 11 p.m. and if you sleep early or if you sleep late, you don't feel properly rested. You feel like, when will I sleep, hai na? So this pineal gland produces melatonin that helps in the sleep and wake cycle. Thymus produces thymosin. This thymosin is responsible for the development of immunity in our body, protecting us from any kind of infections that is possible. Okay. Parathyroid gland produces parathormone that maintains the calcium levels in the blood. These are the three functions of three different glands, three different hormones that you need to remember. Rest of them we have covered in detail because they are very important from exam point of view. They are very less asked, so I have mentioned in a table so that you don't miss out on important information. Okay. Now, question. Write the role of insulin in regulating blood sugar level in the human body. Mention the disease caused due to it. We just studied that insulin kya karega? It will help in the regulation of blood sugar level, because if the blood sugar is high, it will convert the glucose into glycogen. This is the same thing that is being mentioned over here. It will convert the glucose into glycogen. So the blood sugar will decrease. If insulin is absent, glucose will not be converted into glycogen, sugar will increase and diabetes will take place. Okay, so let us write over here. This will also lead to diabetes. Now, how is the timing and amount of release of insulin in the blood regulated? See, as soon as the glucose level goes beyond an appropriate level, the insulin secretion is increased by pancreas. So they cause the conversion of glucose into glycogen. But if glucose is very less, if glucose is lesser than normal, then we don't need pancreas to convert that glucose, right? We need a certain amount of glucose. Above it is also dangerous, below it is also dangerous. है ना? So when the glucose is more, insulin is also more. When the glucose is less, insulin is also less, right? So this is basically directly proportional. If glucose increases, insulin increases. If insulin is less, that means glucose is also less. Okay, so similar things are mentioned over here. You can take a screenshot. Anyway, I think you will be provided with the free notes, so there is no worry. You can just go through them once. Question number 7, very important, beta, very important. Please mark it. It is related to adrenal gland. Okay. Question says, again, it is asked in 2025, 2020, and there were other variations of these questions also I will share. Hormone X is secreted in blood when a person is under scary situation. Identify the hormone X. In scary situation, beta, what will it be? Adrenaline hormone, obviously. Gland, adrenaline. Adrenal gland. Not adrenaline. Okay. So, like, what can I write? X is basically your adrenaline. And the gland is adrenal gland. Okay. So the first part has been done. Explain its role in dealing with scary or emergency situations. What does it do? Increasing the breathing rate, increasing the respiratory rate, sweating, papillary dilation, transporting the blood to flow to the skeletal muscles instead of the digestive system. Now, the or part of this question is, basically the or part is what I have mentioned, that the same kind of question was asked in a different format. Okay, so you know how important it is. Squirrel was in a scary situation, body has to prepare for either fighting or running. State the immediate changes that will occur. What will be the immediate changes? Same. This will be the same as this one. Also, one more thing. This similar kind of question was asked with a cheetah when he saw its prey. So what are the different changes that will take place in the body with which kind of hormone? Same answer. Adrenaline by the adrenal gland, same 5 points. Another kind of question was that an ex-person sat on a roller coaster ride. He was very scared. So which hormone will be released by which gland and what will be the symptoms? Same thing. Okay. So again, the same points I have mentioned over here: adrenaline, adrenal glands, in scary situations, heartbeat increased, blood pressure is increased, more blood will flow to the skeletal system, less will be there to the skin, and breathing will also increase. Okay. Pertaining to the endocrine system, what will you interpret if, again, in sample question paper it was asked, you observe swollen neck in people living in hills. So obviously, why is the swollen neck? That means there is goiter. Goiter disease is taking place. And why goiter? Because that means less iodine content in the body. If there is less iodine in the body, that means thyroxine will not be synthesized. Over secretion of growth hormone takes place, leads to giantism. The person will be very wide and huge. Okay. Facial hair develops in body aged 13. So facial hair mostly develops in male. Hai na? You might get confused, ma'am, males and females not mentioned. But mostly facial hair develops in male. Females have but very less facial hair. So we can say it's in male. So it is testosterone. Testosterone. Okay. These are the answers. Now moving to the next topic, let us see what is about the coordination in plants. Does coordination also take place in plants? Are plants also able to respond to stimuli? Are they also able to sense the stimuli? Yes, students, definitely that also happens, and that coordination in plants majorly takes place by two things. That is, firstly, plant movements. Plants have the ability to move, and secondly, plants also produce certain kinds of hormones. So both of them collectively help the plant in order to produce certain kinds of response. Now, what does plant exactly respond to stimuli? Firstly, if you see this case over here, what do you see, students? This is a touch me not plant. Okay, this is a touch me not plant, which is also called as Mimosa pudica. Okay, it is called as Mimosa pudica. It is its scientific name, and I am sure you must have seen this in your local environments also, right? So as soon as you touch the leaf, it starts to close. Hai na? And now you feel that this particular movement is not a movement because the plant is not in a windy state. It is not, moving across the wind. But since the plant has moved its leaves, it has closed its leaves, it is also a kind of movement. Okay. In the other scenario, what do you see over here? There is sunlight. That means there is a light source and the plant is bending towards it. So plant, as soon as it's bent towards it, that means light, which is a stimulus, plant is bending and showing some movement towards the stimulus. Over here also, as touch was a stimulus, the plant sort of closed its leaf. Okay. But then when you see these two different kinds of movements, there are very minor differences. First, if we talk about touch me not plant, beta, you can touch the plant from any direction. You can touch from here, 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 or even here. All these directions are available, and regardless of which direction do you give the stimulus from, the leaves will close. Got it? So these kind of movements, the movement of the plant does not depend from where the stimulus is coming. It just needs stimulus. It doesn't matter from where it is coming. And also there is no growth, as you can see. Is there any growth? No. The plant was of the same size as it was previously. There is no growth. So there is no growth also over here. है ना? So these kind of movements are actually called as nastic movements. These are called as nastic movements where there is no growth of the plant, beta. There is no growth of the plant, or I can say they are growth independent. These are your nastic movements. On the other hand, when stimulus was given to this particular plant, it starts bending its shoot towards the stimulus. And as it was bending, it was growing also. So these movements where growth is taking place, direction of stimulus is also playing a very important role, because from where the stimulus is coming, plant is also bending, right? So over here, you see growth is happening, direction is also there, and that is why they are called as tropic movements. Tropic movements in plants are also the ones that involve growth. The plant will grow, plus there will be direction. Got my point? Now, both of them are movements. By the way, this is also a movement, this is also a movement, but there are some minor differences. No growth, growth independent. There is growth, growth dependent. Same thing is being mentioned over here, that response to stimuli in plants is actually done by two mechanisms. It is done actually by two mechanisms. Firstly, if we see, not related to growth, that means there will be no growth, you can say independent of growth, called as nastic movements. Related to growth, that means dependent on growth, there will be called as tropic movements. Got my point? So let us first understand some basic points about nastic movements, and before that, I would like to show you something so that you can just understand it better. You can understand it better. Okay, see. This particularly is a touch me not plant, है ना? So when you touch it, the leaves automatically closed. The leaves automatically closed. Was there any kind of growth? No, there was no kind of growth. The plant is still as it is. Was the direction of stimulus important? No. You can touch from here, you can touch from here, or you can touch from here, and you can touch from here. The leaves will still close. So direction of stimulus is also not important. And since growth is not there, that means there is no growth in terms of direction also. And alongside, if you see, this is a Venus flytrap. This is a Venus flytrap. As you see, that as soon as the insect came on its leaves, it got a stimulus and it closed. This is called as your insectivorous plant. That simply means it doesn't matter from where the stimulus comes. The plant is only going to show movement. There is no growth and no direction of stimulus is also required. So both of these beta, they are examples of your nastic movements. These are examples of your nastic movements where actually there is no requirement of a particular stimulus from a particular direction. Got my point? So these are certain things that it's mentioned. Nastic movements are the movement that do not depend on the direction of stimulus. It can come from any particular direction. Do not require any kind of growth. So they are not any growth movements also. Then they occur due to changes in turgor pressure. Basically the change of leaf and the closure of leaf, opening of the leaf depends on the water content. They are very fast and reversible also. Okay. Examples, touch me not, that is Mimosa pudica. Leaves fold when they are touched. Venus flytrap. Leaves close when any insect touches the particular plant. So these are your nastic movements. Apart from them, we also have some kind of movements which are called as tropic movements. But tropic movements are the movements which involve growth in a particular direction that we saw in the previous example. Now understand this with the help of a very basic thing. Over here you see that you give stimulus to the plant. You give stimulus to the plant. Now plant has two choices. Whether the plant can grow in direction of the stimulus. whether the plant can grow in direction of the stimulus, that means it is responding in a positive manner to the stimulus, है ना, or the plant can grow in the direction opposite to the stimulus, or the plant can grow in the direction opposite to the stimulus. That means over here the growth is negative. Correct? So stimulus is given to a plant. Plant has two options of responding, but both are in corresponding to the stimulus, right? Either it will be positive or it could be negative. If it is positive, it means it is in direction of the stimulus, in direction of stimulus. Okay, growth is happening in direction of stimulus and away from stimulus. Away from stimulus. But again, stimulus is required and also a particular direction is required. Got it? Now, similar thing you can understand with the help of an example. Over here is a teacher who is giving an instruction. Students, you have to read your books line by line. You have to solve the questions and the DPPs that I have given you. Now, some students after this stimulus who will be very motivated that yes, I have to study the chapter, I have to solve the questions. So, they are responding in a positive manner. They are responding in a positive manner to the stimulus. The stimulus has been given, they respond positively. But there will be some other students, अरे बाद में पढ़ेंगे, no worries, exams are very ahead and we don't really need to worry about it. No worries, we'll just chill, we'll watch some movie. Ma'am is also not going to say anything because who is going to check our homework? So over here they're responding negatively to the stimulus. Likewise, the growth of the plant is either in direction of the stimulus or away from the stimulus. If it is in direction of the stimulus, it is called as positive. If it is away from the stimulus, it is called as negative. Got my point? Now, talking about different kinds of tropic movements, we have phototropism, hydrotropism, geotropism, thigmotropism as well as chemotropism. Let us understand them one by one. But when we talk about phototropism, photo means light. Photo means light. So that means it is a tropic movement that involves light. It is a tropic movement, that means this has growth plus this has direction also, है ना? So this is a tropic movement which involves light as a stimulus, and with that stimulus there can be two different kinds of movements. Either it could be positive, the plant decides to grow in direction of the light, so it is going to be positive phototropism, or the plant decides to grow away from the light, so it will be called as negative phototropism. Clear to everybody? Let us look at this particular image. Over here you see, this is the source of light, sun. This is your stimulus. And this particular part of the plant, that is called as shoot. Shoot is basically all the part of the plant that are above the soil. है ना, that involves your leaf, stem, flowers, fruits, branches. This shoot system you see is bending towards the stimulus. Towards the stimulus, that means I can say it is positively phototropic. It is positively phototrophic. So shoots are basically your positively phototrophic in nature. But over here, do you see roots? Roots, beta, they are growing away from the stimulus. Over here is the light and their growth is away from the light. So their direction is opposite to the direction of stimulus. So I can say they are negatively phototrophic, right? Because they are growing in direction away from the stimulus. So positive and negative, positive phototropism by the shoots and negative phototropism by the roots. But both are responding to light. So direction of stimulus is very important. Now, coming to hydrotropism. Hydro means water. Again, tropism means growth plus direction. So I'm going to write G plus D in short. Growth plus direction. Okay. So over here, beta, the stimulus is water. The stimulus is your water. And in corresponding to this stimulus, two things can happen. In corresponding to this stimulus, two things can happen. That either the plant can grow positively towards this stimulus. So it is growing positively towards the stimulus, or it can grow negatively to the stimulus. Correct? This is what happens now. So it is basically positively, I can say, hydrotropic. That means it is showing in direction of water growth, and negatively hydrotropic. Let us understand this again with the help of an example over here. Let me mention the two cases, case A and case B. In case A, beta, you see over here that water is present downwards. So what is happening? The roots of the plants are growing downwards towards the water. So I can say, since roots are growing downwards towards the water, that means the stimulus is water, roots are downwards. So roots are positively hydrotropic. Roots are actually your positively hydrotropic, है ना? Because they are growing in direction of the water. So roots are positively hydrotropic. But do you see this shoot system? Do you see this shoot system? It is going away from the water. Water is actually present over here. It is over here, but the shoots are going away from the water. So what can I say? That shoots are beta actually your negatively hydrotropic. This is your negatively hydrotropic. This is your shoot system, correct? This is very clear from this particular example. Let us understand this from another example also. See, over here in case B, the water is actually not present towards the base. The water is actually not present towards the base. Instead, the water is present in a clay pot somewhere here. It is present in a clay pot somewhere here. After some time, what will happen? Water will simply move out and some water droplets will be present over here in the soil. Now the roots are very well able to sense this. Roots are able to sense water. So they are growing in direction of the water. They are growing in direction of the water. Do you see the bending of roots are over here? That means roots, again it is proved that they are positively hydrotropic. Now talking about shoots, beta, shoots are still growing away from the water. This is the direction of water. Negatively hydrotropic. So what can I write over here? That positively hydrotropic are your roots and negatively hydrotropic are your shoots. Got my point? Now, geotropism, very easy again. Geo means gravity and tropism means growth plus direction, right? So simply I'm gonna write stimulus over here is your gravity. Gravity is acting as a stimulus, beta. Clear to everybody? Now again, with correspondence to this particular stimulus, two kinds of movements can take place. Either it can be positive, so I can say it is positive geotropism, it can show, the plant can show positive geotropism, or it can also show negative geotropism, right? These are the two different kinds of positive and negative responses shown by the plants. Let us try to understand this again with the help of two case studies. First it's case A and second is case B. In case A, what are you very simply able to observe is that over here is the plant. The roots are growing better towards the gravity because gravity pulls anything down. Gravity is acting on every object in a downwards direction. So you see roots are growing downwards. So what can I say? They are acting in direction of gravity. Over here is the gravity and roots are acting towards the gravity. So the roots are your positively geotropic, correct? And talking about shoots, shoots are growing in a direction that is away from the gravity. So I can say that since shoots are growing in a direction away, they are negatively geotropic because they are going away from the stimulus. Understand this from case B. You have tilted the pot. You have simply tilted the pot to see whether this geotropism works in a standing pot or a tilted pot. Just to clarify, right? Now still, even if the pot is tilted, beta, what do you see? That the roots are still growing downwards. Roots are still growing downwards. This means whether the pot is standing upright or it is tilted, the roots still grow downwards. That means they are again acting positive towards the stimulus of gravity. So they are positively geotropic, correct? And the shoots still are growing away from gravity, growing away from the stimulus. That means they are negatively geotropic. They are negatively geotropic. I hope it is clear to everyone. So positive geotropism is actually shown by roots and negative geotropism is actually seen by or shown by shoots. Okay. Now coming to thigmotropism. Thigmo actually means touch. It actually means beta touch. And tropism is a movement which will involve growth plus direction. So simply over here I can write stimulus is your touch, okay? Stimulus is your touch, and with regards to that, there can be two different kinds of movements that can be seen. One is positive thigmotropism It is positive thigmotropism, and the other one is negative thigmotropism. That means it is away from the stimulus or away from the touch. Now see, very beautifully we have to understand this with two cases again. This is case A and that one is case B. See, over here what do you see, beta? This is a support. This is a support system. This particular you see is a support system, a wooden stick you can say, or a wooden support it is present. As soon as the tendrils are basically the spiral parts. This particular part that you see now, this is actually a tendril. This is a spiral kind of a part and it looks very thin like a hair. So you just have to just like a spiral, it is very, amazing to just pull it and then see it coil back. Okay, this is a tendril and mostly present in like pea plants. Okay, so what happens, as soon as the tendril comes in contact with the support system, it tries to coil it, beta. It tries to coil it around the support system. So do you see, as soon as it touched the support, it tried to move forward. So it was basically using touch as a stimulus and it grew in direction of touch. So tendrils now are showing positive thigmotropism because they got the touch and they're coiling around it. So what are they? Beta, positive thigmotropism is now seen in tendrils, that means. Okay. Talking about negative thigmotropism, very easy to understand. These are your rocks, these are your roots of the plants, very diverse and very thin root hairs are present and all under the depths. Assume that there is a particular stone. This is just one, but obviously there are multiple stones that they are going to be present in the soil. This is a stone. Okay, as soon as the root will touch the stone, it will feel the touch. As soon as the root touches the stone, it will feel the touch, and automatically after feeling the touch, it will change its direction. It will move away. It will try to move away so as to avoid any kind of barriers in its growth. Right? So as soon as the touch was sensed by the roots, it grew away in the away direction. So they are basically trying to grow away from the touch, away from the stimulus. So these are basically your negative thigmotropism example. Okay. So simply you can write that roots when touch a stone, roots when touch a stone, this is your negatively thigmotropism. Okay. Now chemotropism, chemo actually means chemicals. So over here I can say chemicals are leading to growth and development. That means the stimulus over here is your chemicals. It is your chemicals. Got my point? Again, it can be, used to grow the plant in two different ways. That can be, it could be either positive chemotropism, or it could be beta negative chemotropism. Got my point? Now see, if let us understand again with cases, case A and case B. Okay. See, if let us see all these chemicals that you see around are harmful chemicals. So I'm drawing with red. If these are harmful chemicals, the roots can sense that these are harmful chemicals. So roots are not growing towards it. Roots are growing just linearly to avoid any kind of barrier and any kind of touching to these chemicals, because they sense that these chemicals are not useful. These are harmful, these are toxics. So roots are growing straight downwards. They are not bending towards the right or towards the left. Okay. So this is basically your negative chemotropism, that chemicals are toxic, so roots will not bend in that direction only. Over here you see, let us see, these chemicals are actually very beneficial. So I'm drawing in green color. Okay, now roots can sense that, okay, these chemicals are very useful, will help in my growth. So roots will try to bend in this particular direction. Do you see? This is positive chemotropism. Got my point? Okay. One other kind of positive chemotropism, this is actually positive, you can mention this is positive and this is negative. Okay, and one other kind of positive chemotropism is usually seen in beta pollen tube formation. See, all this is basically an entire structure of a pistil or a carpel. So I'm just gonna first erase so that you don't get confused. I'm gonna just erase so that things can be easier. Okay, so this is a structure of a pistil or a carpel. It is a female reproductive part of a flower. okay, which we will study, no worries, in the reproduction chapter, but as of now you can remember this is a pistil or a carpel. Okay, this has an ovule present in it. This has an ovule present in it which carries a female gamete. Ovule which carries a female gamete. This female gamete needs to meet the male gamete so that beta the formation of a seed can take place. Okay, now what happens? The male gamete comes. The male gamete ultimately comes and sits on the stigma. It comes beta in the form of a pollen tube. Inside this is a male gamete. Now when it comes beta, it pierces and starts forming a pollen tube. This is the pollen tube. But this pollen tube can grow in any direction. It can go here, it can go here, here or here. But we only want that the pollen tube which has the male gamete reaches straight to the ovule where female gamete is present so that they can together form a seed. So what does this ovule do? You know, this ovule beta, it simply releases some chemicals. It simply releases some chemicals, okay, and these chemicals actually guide the pollen tube. These chemicals guide the pollen tube. They attract the pollen tube to grow in this specific direction towards the chemicals, reach ultimately the ovule and fuse with the female gamete. Got my point? So pollen tube towards downwards direction towards the ovule is basically attracted with the help of certain chemicals. Now these chemicals will pull the pollen tube downwards. This is also positive chemotropism. This is positive chemotropism, very important. This pollen tube formation is actually this is pollen tube formation. Okay. Now, moving to the next topics, the same table is present over here. Very precisely, very concisely things are mentioned. Types of tropism, stimulus, definition, positive and negative movement. For example, phototropism, stimulus is light. So, growth in response to light, positive is done by shoot, negative by roots. Geotropism, stimulus is gravity. That means in response to gravity, growth will be seen. Positive is done by roots and again negative is done by shoots. Hydrotropism, stimulus is water, response to water. Now, positive will be done by roots, negative by shoots. Chemotropism, chemicals, it is basically done with regards to the chemicals, growth is seen. Positive is basically by pollen tube, negative is when root touches a stone. Okay. Followed by thigmotropism, stimulus is touch, growth in response to touch. Positive over here is seen by tendrils, negative by roots. Now coming to the last topic of the day, that is plant hormones. But like we have hormones in our body that can travel to different parts of the body via blood, plants also have hormones. Okay. Now plant hormones are also called as phytohormones or also called as plant growth regulators, which can be written as PGRs. 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 Okay, it controls the growth of the plant and responds to stimuli. Now, plant hormones can be of two types. First, it is plant growth promoters. Okay, plant growth promoters are actually the hormones that are going to promote the growth of the plant, that will support the growth of the plant. And the other kind includes plant growth inhibitor that will suppress or inhibit the growth of the plant. Got my point? Okay. So, plant growth promoters are again bit of three types. Okay, they are auxin, gibberellin and cytokinin. What are the plant growth promoters? Auxin, gibberellin and cytokinin. Plant growth inhibitors are basically abscisic acid and ethylene. Okay, let us look at the functions one by one. Very, very important, students. You have to mark that these questions definitely come in exams. Auxin helps in the elongation of cells in the shoots. So, cell elongation will be done with the help of auxins. Now, coming to the next point, that it is basically present in the shoots only, at the tips of the plants you are able to find it. So, cell elongation, okay. Then, bend towards the light and gravity. So, basically it helps in phototropism and geotropism. We will see how it helps in phototropism with the help of a diagram. Gibberellins increase the length of a stem. Okay, it increases the length of a stem. So, the plant will be very, very tall heighted. Helps in the germination of seed. That means the seed will now form roots and shoots. It also helps in the growth of fruits and flowers. Cytokinin helps in cell division. From the name itself, it means cyto means cell, kinin means division. So, it helps in cell division. It delays the aging because it promotes the growth, promotes cell division. So, aging is delayed. The plant is young for a long duration time and also helps in flowering. Abscisic acid is a growth inhibitor, plant growth inhibitor. So, it will cause the closing of stomata. When the stomata will close in case of water stress. So, let us say if already around the plant the water content is very, very low. So, to avoid the water loss by transpiration, abscisic acid will close the Stomata. It will cause the dormancy of seed. But dormancy means that plant is not able to form or germinate. So that inactive state where a seed is present as a seed, it cannot germinate. No matter how good conditions do you give it, no matter how good water, how good nutrients, minerals, temperature you give, plant seed is as it is. That is called dormancy, and that is basically done by abscisic acid. Causing wilting of leaves, basically leaves ka murjha jana. Okay. Ethylene helps in the ripening of fruits, like ripening of bananas. If you keep one raw banana with a very old banana, they will basically release ethylene and cause the rotting of all bananas. Cause falling of leaves and fruits, very very important. Now beta, talking about how does oxygen help in phototropism. Very important, please mark it. Okay, it is very important. How does oxygen help in phototropism? See, from this particular direction sunlight is coming. From this particular direction sunlight is coming, and oxygen is one hormone who is very very scared of sunlight. Oxygen is actually beta scared of sunlight. So what does it do? As soon as it sees that sunlight is here, all the oxygen moves downwards in the shady region. Where there is no sunlight, it basically moves towards the shady region. It is trying to diffuse downwards because it is very very scared of light. Okay. Over here also you see, if sunlight is coming from this particular direction, if sunlight is coming from this particular direction, the oxygen will diffuse in a direction where shade is present. So it will move over here. It will move over here, hai na? Clear? So all the oxygen is now present over here. Now see, sunlight is over here and oxygen is towards the shady region. So what does it do beta? As soon as it gets in the shady region, na, it simply causes the elongation of cells. So the cell becomes larger. The cell becomes larger because wherever oxygen is present, it causes the elongation of cells. So the cells become larger. So wherever oxygen is present, cells are larger. Since oxygen is not present over here, so the cell will be very very small. So the cell will be very very small over here. The cells will be smaller in size. Very small cells. Okay. Because of which, since the cells are long over here, it will cause the bending. The cells will start to bend because wherever there is length is more, it tries to bend. And over here you see, as soon as the length increased, it sort of bended towards the sunlight. That is how the oxygen is responsible for the bending of your shoots towards the sunlight. So oxygen is a plant hormone produced in the tip of the shoot. Over here you see it is towards the tip, but it is very very scared of light. So when light falls on one side of the shoot, oxygen will diffuse to the shaded side or the side which has very less amount of light. More oxygen on the shaded side causes the cell to grow longer. So if there is oxygen more over in shaded side, cells will be very very long in length. Okay, the cells on the lighted side grow less because one side grows faster than the other, so the shoot bends towards the light. That is the whole mechanism of oxygen, you should remember. Coming to, okay, question number 9, which is from CBSE 2023. The question says, select from the following the correct statement about tropic movements. See, about tropic movement, which one is correct? It is due to the stimulus of touch and temperature. Not only touch and temperature, there are many others also. Like gravity is there, water is there, chemicals are there. It does not depend on the direction of stimulus. It definitely depends on the direction of stimulus. Okay, it is observed only in roots, not in stem. No, but it is also seen in stems. Okay, it is a growth related movement. Yes, correct. It is definitely a growth related movement. You are supposed to see growth over here. So D is the correct option. Now, what are plant hormones? Name the plant hormones responsible for the following: growth of the stem, promotion of cell division, inhibition of growth, elongation of cells. See, plant hormones are basically phytohormones, right? These are responsible for the growth of the plant, development of the plant, and they are again of two types: plant growth inhibitors, plant growth promoters. Okay, name the plant hormone responsible for the growth of stem. So the plant height will be more, but it will be gibberellin. Gibberellin is responsible for the elongation, or I can say growth of the stem. Cell division will be promoted by cytokinin. Cytokinin will do it. Inhibition of growth, obviously your ABA, or I can say abscisic acid. Okay, then we have elongation of cells, auxin. Auxin Baba we have. Okay, these are the 4 types of answers for this particular question. Now, plant hormones are chemical substances produced in plants that control growth, development and responses to stimuli. Moving forward, Okay, this is a homework question. Sheila saw a snake and jumped back. She then slowly moved away from the snake. What is the difference between two actions? I'll just explain you. It's a very nice case-based question, application-based questions rather. Sheila saw a snake. She instantly jumped. But then she slowly moved back. What is the difference between the two movements? Jumping back instantly and moving back slowly. Okay, this is your homework first. And secondly, observe the three given figures which of the following depicts tropic movement appropriately. These three figures are there. You have to tell which one shows the best kind of tropic movements. This is your homework. I want all of you to pause the video and then answer it down in the comment box. I will read all of them. Okay, so I think that is all for the session today. I hope you enjoyed it, but still, by any chance you have doubts, please let me know in the comments box so that I can get back to you. Thank you so much for watching the video, and for more such videos, please subscribe to the channel so that you never miss out on a new one. Till then, bye-bye everybody. Please take care of yourself, stay hydrated, eat well, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.